Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Star Wars video. In the second half of today's video we do have some pretty positive updates for Star Wars movies and TV shows, but we begin with something I will admit is very disappointing. Despite the show being very well praised, having such fantastic reviews and a high Rotten Tomatoes score, the viewership metrics are in for the first 2 episodes and it's bad news. But unsurprising, not only did Skeleton Crew fail to hit the top 10, it didn't even make the top 20. It seems like it's been a rough year for Star Wars. And this is a direct reflection of what we've been saying, guys. Lucasfilm have failed to hit the mark time and again. Skeleton Crew's great, the quality of the show's great, but fewer fans are checking out the new projects. And The Acolyte really was the nail in the coffin. Do you know how many DMs, how many comments, how many fans I've heard saying, Skeleton Crew looks fine, but I just feel a bit exhausted by Star Wars. People were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, but these days, it's harder to do. This is why I think Lucasfilm was kind of scared in the lead up to Skeleton Crew, because they could sense fans weren't resonating with recent projects. And I know I'm giving The Acolyte a hard time, but this downward trend in viewership and interest predates it. The Star Wars IP is still very successful, but this definitely brings up the question of if Disney Plus is the right platform to deliver Star Wars stories. And Disney don't seem to think so, which is why they're returning to the big screen. And as a fan of Skeleton Crew, it makes me worried that this is going to kill any possibility of a season 2, despite John Watts and Chris Ford wanting to do one. And so despite high acclamation for this series, that's not what matters. Very few fans are showing up to watch it, and that is such a shame. The amount of people actively interested in new shows is a percentage of just a few years ago. These new metrics, the charts, are proving that. Could you even fathom 4 or 5 years ago a Star Wars project not breaking the top 20? Top 10 for a show like this? More aimed at families, fine, but top 20, Star Wars, one of the biggest IPs in the world. That should tell you what it's come to. And I'm saying this as someone who's loving Skeleton Crew, someone who's come out to defend it. I love the first 2 episodes, I love what the show is doing, how it's been set up, and all of the videos I've made on it clearly reflect that. But it's so disappointing there are not more fans who are giving it a chance. But it makes sense. This is actually something I predicted weeks and weeks ago. I said no matter how good Skeleton Crew is, I just never thought it'd be the show to bring back Star Wars fans who lost interest at various points in Disney Star Wars' past. Ironically, I think Skeleton Crew is a very refreshing new start. I'm hoping as the weeks go on, as the show gets more discussions on social media, as it gets more popularity, more and more fans tune in. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I wouldn't rule the show out just based on the first week's metrics. Remember that shows like The Book of Boba Fett saw high viewership at the end, but it's pretty surprising a Star Wars show doesn't reach the top 20. In all fairness, Skeleton Crew does have some pretty heavy competition, and it's not been marketed in the same way as other shows. There isn't the same push, the same urgency, that it's a must-watch Star Wars project. But, as we said for Andor, as word of mouth gets out, as more and more good reviews come in, as more and more people find out about it, because you'd be surprised how many fans don't even know this exists, numbers will hopefully increase. But like I say, I'm not trying to sound negative. I love this project, but it does feel a bit more niche, primarily aimed at the core, die-hard Star Wars fandom. And I'm also so grateful to you guys who engage in my theories and my discussions about the series, and it's so great to have this community where we can talk about it. And I kind of suspected this would be the case. But you know, just like Tony Gilroy said for Andor Season 1, in spite of low viewership, positive and good reviews, a strong following, and all of those kind of things do contribute to shows getting more than 1 season. And I do think Skeleton Crew deserves it. And just a palate cleanser before we move on to our next topic, we have new photos of some of the characters. KB and Fern, and KB's a very important character this week, as well as some of Neel's family, his mother Numa, and his siblings Tolu and Jorka. This species is adorable. Could you imagine if they met Grogu? The New Republic has some really cool aliens. But moving on to some more positive news, guys. Hayden Christensen teases Kenobi Season 2, or is he referring to Ahsoka Season 2, in flashbacks? At a recent convention, when a Star Wars fan asked him, "Are you going to team up with Ewan McGregor again for more Anakin and Obi-Wan?" And he says, quote, "We got some stuff brewing." And between Hayden and Ewan, we have had quite a few teases that suggest we will be getting a second season of Kenobi at some point. With Star Wars Celebration 2025 just around the corner, that would be the perfect time to announce something. But now, my dear friends, as we approach Andor Season 2, Felicity Jones, Jyn Erso in Rogue One, who died at the end of the movie, was asked if she might make a return, and she gives a very promising response. Andor's second season covers the remaining 4 years leading up to Rogue One and A New Hope, and Jyn is very much still out there, but there's no reason for her to appear in this story because Jyn and Saw Gerrera have already parted ways by this stage, and she doesn't meet Cassian until Rogue One, so there really is no reason for it. That being said, she does allude to the fact there might be a small reference to Jyn, just a tiny mention by Saw or one of his partisans, and this to me makes sense. A small name drop, or as she puts it, a hologram, is precisely the sort of thing I can imagine Tony Gilroy doing. And Felicity Jones now says she hasn't given up on returning. Whether she knows something, or just simply loves the character or loves the universe, she doesn't want to rule anything out, and she states, never say never. Maybe she'll come back as a hologram or something, which is completely possible in the Star Wars universe. Is she telling us something here? Are we going to see a hologram of her? Maybe not from Saw, but from her father, Galen Erso, who rumours have been saying for ages is in Season 2. The Death Star project is such a huge part of this. So maybe at one point he misses his daughter, there are flashbacks, a hologram, a picture, something. But I very much doubt Jyn Erso's story during this period is something that fits with the overall story. Mon Mothma, Saw Gerrera, Luthen, Cassian, Cato Erso, Krennic. Jyn's survival during this period, being abandoned by Saw Gerrera, all of that would be a real diversion from the main storyline, so I don't think it's going to happen. But she might be referenced even after her death further down the timeline too. We know in the comics, Luke Skywalker learns about her, and she was considered a rebel hero by Hera, Mon Mothma, and Leia. It's also been noted, Felicity Jones signed on for more, beyond a single film, so we don't know what they have planned. I mean, she did lend her voice to Jyn Erso in Forces of Destiny in Season 1, then she was replaced by Helen Sadler, but in terms of live action, Felicity Jones is down. And so finally guys, Star Wars movies, what's going on? We at last have an official update from James Mangold about Dawn of the Jedi. He's confirmed he is still writing it with Beau Willem on, but he says he has no idea what Lucasfilm is going to do next. He doesn't know when it's going to go into production, but he still needs to finish the first draft. It's good to see things churning along, but in terms of Lucasfilm and Star Wars, you can never really get a sense of a concrete timeline because there have been many projects that reached this stage that never came out. On the movie side, I think they're going to give everything to the Mandalorian and Grogu. It's now in post-production, but in terms of what's after that, nobody seems to know. It's been a good few months since Mangold's even addressed his Star Wars movie, and it's the one that seems to break the mold. An untouched era, going all the way back to the origins of the Jedi. It stands out compared to something like Lando, Mando and Grogu, the Rey movie, and for that reason, it's the one in theory that is the least shackled to what's come before it. The creativity can run wild on it, they're not beholden to much, because even something like Skeleton Crew, which is doing something extremely different to the rest of the Mandoverse, is still tied down to what we know is going on in the rest of the galaxy at the same time. So some promising news there. With that said though guys, that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. Did you enjoy it? If you did, let me know. Please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.